Oh, it's you again. I kept forgetting you. Nothing like that stupid black guy.
Mrs. Caldwell scrutinized the 18-year-old from head to toe, as if he were a mistake that had just walked in.
All right, I have a college-level advanced problem, math problem on this board. Can your pretty little black brain handle it? Pick it up and do it. I want the whole class to see the emptiness behind those eyes.
She turned to the students.
Let's see what this black boy learned from his backside.
The class fell silent. Terrence picked up the marker. Without a word, he walked to the board. He began to write. 40 seconds later, her face changed. Her jaw dropped. Not a word came out. The 18-year-old boy made her regret what she had done. To understand what happened that day, you need to understand where Terrence Powell came from, and more importantly, what he was up against. Lincoln Westfield High sits on the corner of a cracked block in West Philadelphia. The kind of school where the ceiling tiles sag when it rains, where the hallway lights flicker like they're deciding whether to give up. The advanced math elective got cut 2 years ago. Budget reasons. The library closes at 3. Budget reasons. Half the lockers don't lock. Nobody even files a report anymore. Every morning, Terrence Powell, 18 years old, senior year, rode 2 city buses from a 1-bedroom apartment in Kingsessing to get to that building. 45 minutes each way. Rain, snow, didn't matter. He never missed a day. Not once in 4 years. His mother, Lorraine Powell, worked the overnight shift at Jefferson Hospital as a nurse's aide. She left before he went to sleep. She came home after he left for school. Some weeks, they only spoke through notes on the kitchen table. And every single week, without fail, Lorraine would leave a used math workbook on that table. Found at Goodwill for $1.50. Dog-eared, coffee-stained, sometimes missing pages, but always there. Always with the same sticky note pressed on top. You're smarter than you know. That was his inheritance. Not money, not connections. Sticky notes and second-hand textbooks from a woman who believed in him more than the whole world did. Now let's talk about the woman standing on the other side of that classroom. Mrs. Sandra Caldwell wasn't some random substitute. She had a master's degree in mathematics education from Temple University, 14 years in the classroom, 8 years as department chair. She had sent students to state-level competitions. She had letters of recommendation framed on her office wall. She was respected. She was credentialed. And she was absolutely certain she could spot talent the moment it walked through her door. The problem was, she only spotted it in certain faces. Terrence was quiet. He wore the same 3 shirts in rotation. He doodled in the margins of his notebook instead of raising his hand. He never asked for extra credit. He never performed for attention. And Caldwell read all of that as one thing: incapable. She wasn't evil. That's the part that makes this worse. She was experienced. She was credentialed. She had every reason to trust her own judgment. But her judgment had a blind spot the size of a human being. And that blind spot had a name. Here's what Sandra Caldwell didn't know. Every night, after the apartment went quiet, Terrence Powell opened a cracked phone screen, propped it against a cereal box on the kitchen counter, and watched MIT OpenCourseWare lectures. Real ones, not the introductory stuff. He watched graduate-level professors work through epsilon delta proofs. He paused, rewound, and solved alongside them. He filled composition notebooks, 11 of them by senior year, with proofs, theorems, and solutions to problems most undergrads would never touch. He didn't learn the version of calculus Mrs. Caldwell taught in her AP class. He learned the real thing: convergence series, topology puzzles from online math forums, problems that PhD students argued about in comment threads. At 18, Terrence Powell had quietly taught himself past the first 2 years of a university math degree, and no one at Lincoln Westfield High School had any idea. Darnell Williams knew, his best friend since freshman year, the only person at school who'd ever seen inside those notebooks. Lorraine knew. She didn't understand the equations, but she understood the fire behind them. Nobody else knew, and nobody was about to find out, unless something changed. That something was the Philadelphia Regional Mathematics Olympiad. 6 weeks away, 12 schools, 36 competitors, 3 rounds of increasing difficulty. The top 3 finishers would receive full scholarships to the University of Pennsylvania's Summer Mathematics Institute. That's the kind of line on a college application that changes everything. Mrs. Caldwell chose who represented Lincoln Westfield. She had already selected 2 students. There was 1 spot left. Terrence had never been considered. Not once. Not even as a backup. Darnell told him straight, "You need to ask Caldwell for that last spot." Terrence shook his head. "She'd never pick me." Darnell leaned in. "Then don't ask her to pick you. Make her. It's senior year, T. Last chance. There's no next time." And that's the thing about last chances. They don't wait for you to be ready. So what happens when a kid with no backing, no name, and no invitation decides to show up anyway? It was a Tuesday, the kind of gray Philadelphia morning that makes everything feel heavier than it already is. Mrs. Caldwell was halfway through a lesson on integration by parts, standard AP material, nothing unusual. She worked through one example on the board, then paused. She picked up a different color marker, red, and wrote a second problem underneath. This one wasn't from the AP textbook. It was from a college-level real analysis exam, a proof involving the convergence of an infinite series using the ratio test, then extending it to a general case. Graduate students have struggled with this kind of problem. It had no business being on a high school whiteboard. Caldwell wrote it up as a bonus brain teaser. She stepped back, admired it like she'd hung a painting, and then turned around. Her eyes went straight to the back row, straight to Terrence. He'd been writing in his notebook, quietly, not bothering anyone, not asking for attention, just working ahead, the way he always did. And that's when she said it. You already heard what she said. You already know how she looked at him, like he was nothing, like his brain was empty, like 18 years of his life hadn't produced a single thought worth hearing. She flicked the marker at his desk and told him to perform for the class. Here's what happened next, in real time. Terrence closed his notebook. Slowly. He placed his pencil on top of it, lined up with the spine, the way he always did. Then he stood up. The walk from the back row to the front of that classroom was 8 seconds long, but it felt like a full minute. His sneakers on the linoleum, that was the only sound. Every student in that room was frozen. Darnell gripped the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles went pale. 2 girls in the second row exchanged a look. One of them mouthed the word, "Don't." Caldwell's smirk twitched, just slightly, when Terrence actually stood up. She hadn't expected that. She expected him to sit there and take it, to mumble something, to prove her right. He didn't. Terrence reached the board, picked up the red marker, read the problem. And here's the thing. He recognized it. Not that exact problem, but a variant. He'd solved one like it 3 months ago, alone, at midnight, from a problem set he found on an MIT forum. Propped phone, cereal box, kitchen counter. He uncapped the marker and started writing. No hesitation, no false starts, just clean, steady lines of logic appearing on that whiteboard like they'd always been there, waiting for someone to uncover them. 30 seconds in, Caldwell's smirk faded. 60 seconds, her arms uncrossed, her hands dropped to her sides. 90 seconds. She stepped forward. Not to stop him, to read. Her eyes moved across the board, line by line, and something in her face shifted, something she couldn't hide. Terrence finished the proof, capped the marker, set it on the ledge, walked back to his seat, sat down, didn't look at her, didn't look at anyone. He never said a single word. The classroom was silent. Not bored silence, not confused silence. The silence of 30 people realizing they just witnessed something they didn't fully understand, but could feel in their bones. Caldwell stared at the board for a long time. She didn't say, correct. She didn't say, good job. She didn't say anything. She cleared her throat, continued the lesson, moved on like nothing happened. But at the end of class, just as students were packing up, her voice cut through the noise. Terrence, stay behind. 2 words, and everything that followed, everything, started right there. So what did Sandra Caldwell want with the kid she just tried to destroy? The classroom emptied in under a minute. Bags zipped, chairs scraped. 30 students poured into the hallway like they couldn't get out fast enough. A few glanced at Terrence on their way out. Nobody said anything. Darnell was the last one through the door. He looked at Terrence, then at Caldwell, then back at Terrence. His face said everything. Be careful. The door clicked shut. Caldwell didn't sit. She stood, behind her desk, with both palms flat on the surface, leaning forward slightly, like a detective in an interrogation room. She didn't start with a compliment. She didn't start with curiosity. She started with suspicion. Where did you learn that? Terrence stood near his desk, hands at his sides. I taught myself. Caldwell tilted her head. You taught yourself real analysis at 18. Yes, ma'am. From what? YouTube? MIT OpenCourseWare. Textbooks from Goodwill. Math forums. She stared at him like she was waiting for the real answer, like the truth couldn't possibly be that simple or that impressive. Did someone help you? A tutor? A family member? No. Did you look it up on your phone before you came to the board? No, ma'am. You can check my phone. It's in my bag. Caldwell straightened up, crossed her arms, chewed on the inside of her cheek. She wasn't angry exactly. She was something worse. She was unsettled. Because what she just saw didn't fit into any box she had built in 14 years of teaching. And rather than rebuild the box, she decided to test it one more time. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper, placed it face up on the desk, and slid it toward Terrence. This is the problem I use to screen students for the Olympiad team. Every student who's ever represented this school has solved it first. Sit down, solve it. Right now. No phone, no notebook. Just you and the paper. She set a timer on her desk. 12 minutes. Go. Terrence sat. He read the problem. It was a combinatorics puzzle. A grid-based arrangement with a specific set of constraints. Determine the number of valid configurations and prove that the solution is unique. At first glance, it looked like a brute force counting problem. Most students would treat it that way. They'd start listing possibilities, crossing off violations, grinding through case after case. Terrence didn't do that. He stared at it for almost a full minute without writing. Caldwell watched. Her eyes narrowed. She probably thought he was stuck. He wasn't stuck. He was seeing. First, pattern recognition. Terrence identified the underlying structure of the problem. It wasn't random. The grid had symmetry, rotational symmetry, that reduced the total number of unique cases by a factor of 4. Most students never see that. They dive in and drown in numbers. Terrence saw the shape of the problem before touching the math. Second, systematic elimination. Instead of counting what works, Terrence eliminated what couldn't work. He wrote 3 lines of logic, each one ruling out entire families of configurations in a single stroke. Clean, surgical, fast. Third, and this is the part that changed everything, Terrence stopped writing. He put his pencil down, picked up the paper, read one of the constraints again, then read a different constraint, then read them both together, and he circled something. Not an answer, not a step. He circled a contradiction. Mrs. Caldwell. She looked up from the timer, 7 minutes left. This constraint here, condition 4, contradicts condition 3. If you keep condition 4 as written, there's no valid solution. The problem is unsolvable. Caldwell blinked. Excuse me? Condition 3 restricts the arrangement to non-adjacent placement. But condition 4 requires at least 2 elements to share a border. You can't satisfy both at the same time. It's a contradiction. She didn't move, didn't speak. If you change condition 4 to diagonal adjacency instead of direct adjacency, the answer is 14 unique configurations. And uniqueness follows from the symmetry reduction I showed in step 1. He slid the paper back across the desk. On it were his 3 steps of elimination: the identified contradiction, the corrected constraint, and the final answer. All written in clean, unhurried handwriting. 7 minutes still on the clock. Caldwell picked up the paper. She read it once, then again. Then she opened her drawer, pulled out a folder, and found the original version of the problem, the one she'd photocopied from a textbook 5 years ago. She compared them. Terrence was right. When she'd copied the problem years ago, she introduced a typo in condition 4. 1 word. That's all it took. And in 5 years of using this as her gold standard screening test, not a single student, not one, had ever caught it. Until an 18-year-old kid from King Sessing sat down and found it in under 5 minutes. Caldwell placed both papers on her desk. She sat down slowly. She was quiet for a long time. Long enough for the silence to become uncomfortable. Long enough for Terrence to wonder if he'd made a mistake by speaking up. Then she said it. Tight. Controlled. Almost through her teeth. I'll consider you for the 3rd Olympiad slot. Not, that was brilliant. Not, I'm sorry for what I said. Not even, you were right. Just, I'll consider you. Terrence nodded once, picked up his bag, walked out. Darnell was leaning against the hallway wall, arms crossed, leg bouncing. The second Terrence came through the door, he pushed off the wall. What happened? What'd she say? She said she'd consider me. Consider you? After that? She should be begging you. Terrence almost smiled. Almost. That's not how it works, Dee. Darnell shook his head, fell into step beside him. She's not going to make this easy for you, T. You know that, right? I know. They walked down the hallway, flickering lights overhead, cracked tiles under their feet. 2 kids in a school the system forgot. She said she'd consider him. But Terrence didn't know yet what consideration looked like in Sandra Caldwell's world. And trust me, neither do you. Consider turned out to be Sandra Caldwell's favorite word. She used it the way some people use a leash. Just enough slack to make you think you're free, but never enough to let you run. 3 days after the screening test, Caldwell posted the final Olympiad roster on the classroom door. 3 names. Terrence Powell was 3rd on the list. Not because she believed in him, but because she couldn't justify leaving him off. Not after what he did to her problem. But she made the terms very clear. You'll attend every after-school practice session. You'll follow my methods. You'll show your work the way I teach it, not whatever self-taught shortcut you picked up on the internet. And if I decide at any point that you're not ready, I pull you. No discussion. Terrence nodded. Yes, ma'am. One more thing. You'll be working alongside Garrett Sullivan. Garrett Sullivan, 18 years old, senior at Whitfield Preparatory, the magnet school across town with a math wing that had its own funding line. Two-time top 10 finisher at the state level, published in his school's academic journal as a junior. Tall, confident, and polished in a way that made everything he said sound like a fact, even when it was just an opinion. The first day of practice, Garrett walked into the room, scanned the 3 team members, and extended his hand to Terrence. Loose grip, quick shake, eyes already somewhere else. Cool, so you're the alternate? Terrence met his gaze. I'm the 3rd member. Garrett half smiled. Right, the alternate. He said it light, like a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a label. And labels, once they stick, are hard to peel off. Practice sessions under Caldwell were brutal. Timed problem sets, rapid-fire drills, each answer graded on method as much as result. Caldwell ran it like boot camp, and her rules were non-negotiable. That's where the real friction started. Second session, Caldwell handed out a problem set. 5 proofs, 20 minutes. Terrence finished in 14. But when Caldwell reviewed his work, she put a red line through problem 3. Incomplete. Terrence looked at the paper. The answer's correct. The method is wrong. You skipped 2 steps. I didn't skip them. I used a substitution that makes those steps unnecessary. Caldwell set down her pen. At the Olympiad, they want process. They want to see how you think. Not tricks, not shortcuts. Do it again, the right way. Terrence looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his pencil and redid the problem, the standard way. 4 times as long, same answer. Every step shown. Perfect. Caldwell collected the paper without a word. Garrett glanced over from his desk. He'd been watching. He didn't say anything either. But something shifted in his face, the faintest crack in that casual confidence. Because he'd seen Terrence's original solution, and he knew, even if he'd never admit it, that it was cleaner than his own. Now here's what was waiting at the other end of all this. The Philadelphia Regional Mathematics Olympiad. Not a classroom exercise, not a practice drill, a real competition. 12 schools, 36 of the best math students in the region, 3 rounds of increasing difficulty. The final round, performed live on stage at the University of Pennsylvania's Irvine Auditorium. 600 seats, live streamed. Parents, teachers, college recruiters, and press in attendance. And sitting at the center of the judges' panel, Dr. Edwin Moore, professor of mathematics at Penn, published researcher in algebraic topology. 12 years judging the Olympiad. Known for exactly 2 things: absolute fairness and 0 tolerance for anything that wastes mathematical talent. Dr. Moore had written papers on equity in STEM education. He believed, and said publicly, that genius has no zip code and no skin color. He was the one person in that auditorium who would judge Terrence purely on what he put on the board. But Terrence didn't know that yet. All he knew was that he had 6 weeks to prepare, a teacher who graded him harder than anyone else on the team, a rival who called him the alternate, and 1 shot, his last shot, to prove he belonged. Senior year, 18 years old, no second chance. So here's a kid fighting on 3 fronts. A teacher who doesn't believe in him, a rival who doesn't see him, and a clock that won't slow down. 6 weeks, that's all he's got. But what does preparation look like when the whole system is stacked against you? 6 weeks. That's 42 days. And every single one of them left a mark. Week 1. The public library on 52nd Street became Terrence's second home. Not by choice. Lincoln Westfield's library closed at 3 p.m. Budget cuts. So every afternoon, Terrence rode the bus 4 extra stops, sat at the same table in the back corner, and worked until the librarian tapped his shoulder at closing time. One night, Tuesday, first week, he cracked a proof that had been eating him alive for 2 straight weeks. A number theory problem involving prime distribution in modular systems. He'd tried 6 different approaches, all dead ends. But on that Tuesday, something clicked. A connection he hadn't seen before. He wrote it out, checked it twice, and set his pencil down. Small fist pump under the table. Quiet exhale. Nobody saw it. Nobody needed to. That was the thing about Terrence. His wins didn't come with fireworks. They came in silence, at a scratched-up library table, under fluorescent lights that buzzed like tired insects. But for every win, there was a loss waiting right behind it. Week 2. The Olympiad registration packet arrived at school. Caldwell handed out the information sheets during practice. Dress code. Business attire required. Blazer, dress shirt, dress shoes, non-negotiable. Terrence didn't own a blazer. He didn't own dress shoes. He'd worn the same pair of sneakers for 11 months. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't ask for help. But Lorraine noticed. Mothers always notice. That Friday, she worked a double shift, 16 hours on her feet at Jefferson Hospital. Saturday morning, before Terrence woke up, she took the bus to a thrift store on Woodland Avenue. She came back with a navy blazer, a white shirt, still in its dry cleaning bag, and a pair of black shoes, one size too big. The blazer didn't fit right. Too wide in the shoulders, too long in the sleeves. She sat at the kitchen table with a sewing kit and adjusted it herself. Not a tailor's job, a mother's job. Safety pins along the inside seams, tiny, invisible stitches where the fabric bunched. When Terrence came downstairs and saw it hanging on the back of a chair, he didn't speak for a long time. Lorraine didn't look up from the shoes she was polishing. She just said, quiet and steady, "You walk in there like you own the place. You hear me?" He nodded. "Say it." "Yes, ma'am." That blazer cost $11. The safety pins cost nothing. What they meant, you couldn't put a price on that. Week 3. Practice sessions were getting harder. Caldwell pushed the team through timed drills that simulated competition pressure. 20 minutes per problem, no calculator, no reference material. Terrence kept pace, more than kept pace. One afternoon, something happened that nobody expected. Caldwell handed out a practice exam. 6 problems, 35 minutes. Garrett finished first. He always finished first. That was his thing. Except this time, he didn't. Terrence set his pencil down with 4 minutes still on the clock. Garrett was still writing. The other teammate was still writing. Terrence sat back in his chair and waited. Garrett noticed. His hand stopped mid-equation. He looked at Terrence's completed paper, then back at his own. He didn't say anything, just erased his last 3 lines and started over. Like it didn't bother him. Like he hadn't been watching. But he had. Week 4, and this is where it gets ugly. Caldwell submitted the official team roster to the competition committee. Standard procedure. Each coach provides a brief written evaluation for every team member. Terrence never saw what she wrote. None of the students did. But I'm going to tell you. Garrett Sullivan's evaluation read, exceptional analytical thinker, strong competition history, consistently demonstrates rigorous methodology. The second teammate's evaluation was similar, glowing, professional, supportive. Terrence Powell's evaluation read, added late to roster, non-traditional preparation background, performance inconsistent. 3 sentences. That's all it took. 3 sentences from a woman who watched him solve her unsolvable problem, catch her 5-year-old mistake, and finish a practice exam before her best student, and still wrote inconsistent. Remember those 3 sentences. They're going to matter later. Week 5. Terrence had been active on an online math forum for almost 2 years. Anonymous handle, no real name, no photo. Just solutions, proofs, and the occasional question that sparked debates lasting dozens of replies. That week, he posted something new. An original approach to a classic combinatorics problem that had a well-known standard solution. His approach was different, shorter, more elegant. It used a symmetry argument that most people missed. Within a day, a user responded, "This is genuinely elegant work. Are you a graduate student?" Terrence typed back, "Senior in high school." The response came fast. "You're serious? Don't ever stop. The field needs minds like yours." A stranger on the internet saw in 30 seconds what Sandra Caldwell refused to see in 4 years. Think about that. Week 6, the night before competition day. Terrence sat at the kitchen counter with his notebook, reviewing key proofs and formulas. Lorraine had left for her shift 2 hours earlier. The apartment was quiet. Just him, the hum of the refrigerator, and the glow of the desk lamp. At 9:47 p.m., the power went out. Rolling blackout. The whole block went dark. Terrence sat in the darkness for a full minute. Then he pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and kept studying. He worked through 2 more proofs by phone light. At 10:30, the battery hit 8%. He plugged it into the wall. Dead outlet. No power. At 11:02, the screen went black. He lay on his bed in the dark, staring at the ceiling, running equations in his head, reciting proofs from memory like prayers. And somewhere across the city, in a warm, well-lit house with a fully charged laptop and a private tutor on speed dial, Garrett Sullivan went to bed early after a light review session. His blazer, tailored, brand new, hung in a garment bag behind his bedroom door. Meanwhile, at Lincoln Westfield, the hallways buzzed with talk. Word had spread that Terrence was on the math team. Some students were proud. A few offered quiet fist bumps in the hallway. But others weren't so kind. Terrence thinks he's Einstein now. Bro probably can't even spell Olympiad. She only picked him because she felt sorry for him. Darnell shut it down when he could, once with words, once with a look that ended a conversation mid-sentence. But he couldn't be everywhere. Terrence never responded. Not once. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself, didn't explain. He just kept showing up to practice, kept riding 2 buses to school, kept filling notebooks in the dark. 6 weeks. 4 weeks. 10 days. 3 days. Tomorrow. 42 days of work. A thrift store blazer held together with safety pins. A phone that died when he needed it most. A teacher who called him inconsistent. A rival who called him the alternate. And a voice in the hallway that said he didn't belong. Tomorrow, Terrence Powell would walk into a room with the best young math minds in Philadelphia. And every single one of those obstacles would either break him or prove they never could. So what happens when tomorrow finally arrives and brings something nobody saw coming? Competition day, Saturday morning. The sky over Philadelphia was steel gray, like even the weather wasn't sure what was about to happen. The Lincoln Westfield team arrived at the University of Pennsylvania campus at 8:15 a.m. Terrence stepped out of Caldwell's car, she'd driven all 3 students, and looked up at Irvine Auditorium for the first time. Stone columns, tall windows, a banner stretched across the entrance. Philadelphia Regional Mathematics Olympiad, 34th Annual. This was not Lincoln Westfield High. This was another world entirely. Inside, the registration hall was already humming. 36 students from 12 schools, blazers and ties, confident handshakes, parents with cameras, coaches with clipboards. Garrett Sullivan walked in like he'd been here before, because he had, twice. He signed in, pinned his badge, and disappeared into the preparation room without looking back. Terrence stood in line. He could feel the safety pins pressing against his ribs through the blazer lining. The shoes were half a size too big. He didn't adjust them. He just waited. Mrs. Caldwell handled the team's registration paperwork at the front desk. Terrence was 3 feet away, kneeling down to tie his shoe, when he heard it. The competition coordinator, a woman with a lanyard and a tablet, leaned toward Caldwell and spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. Mrs. Caldwell, I need to flag something. Your evaluation for one of your students used the word inconsistent. Under our new policy this year, any flagged evaluation requires a review by the head judge before that student can advance past round 1. Caldwell's face didn't change. I understand. Dr. Moore will review the student's round 1 performance during the lunch break. If he approves, the student advances. If not, I said I understand. The coordinator nodded and moved on. Terrence stayed kneeling. His fingers had stopped moving on his shoelace. He didn't look up, didn't react, but he heard every word. 3 sentences, written weeks ago. Performance inconsistent. That's all it took to build a wall between him and round 2. Not his score, not his ability. 3 sentences from a woman who never believed he belonged here in the first place. Even if he aced round 1, even if he scored higher than every student in this building, his advancement wasn't guaranteed. It depended on the approval of a man he'd never met, triggered by the words of a woman who tried to humiliate him in front of 30 classmates. Terrence finished tying his shoe, stood up, walked to the holding room, sat down among 35 strangers, opened his notebook to a blank page, and at the top, in steady handwriting, he wrote 4 words. Make it undeniable. He closed the notebook and waited for round 1 to begin. But here's what Terrence didn't know yet. Making it undeniable was about to get a whole lot harder than he imagined. Round 1 was a written exam. 90 minutes, 10 problems. No talking, no calculators, just pencil, paper, and whatever you carried inside your head. Terrence sat in the 3rd row. Garrett was 2 rows ahead, already writing before most students finished reading problem 1. Terrence read all 10 problems first, didn't touch his pencil for 4 minutes. A few students glanced over, probably thought he was frozen. He wasn't frozen, he was mapping. Then he started, calm, methodical, every line clean. He moved through the problems like a man walking through rooms he'd already visited in the dark. Finished with 11 minutes left, pencil down, booklet closed, hands folded. When scores posted 1 hour later, students crowded the hallway bulletin board. Some exhaled with relief. Others turned away quietly. Terrence found his name. 2nd place overall, 2 points behind Garrett, ahead of every other competitor from all 12 schools. 2nd out of 36. First competition ever. 1 slow exhale. That was it. Then the coordinator appeared at his shoulder. Terrence Powell, come with me. She led him down a side hallway and stopped near an empty classroom. Your teacher's evaluation was flagged under our review policy. Dr. Moore will review your round 1 paper during the lunch break before you can advance. Until then, you're not cleared for the preparation room. How long? About 20 minutes. 20 minutes. While every other qualifier reviewed strategy and prepared for the oral round, Terrence would be sitting in a hallway. Because of 3 sentences a woman wrote weeks ago, She walked away. Terrence stood alone. The sounds of competition, footsteps, laughter, students preparing, faded behind double doors he wasn't allowed through. He sat on a metal bench against the wall, safety pins pressed into his ribs. The shoes, half a size too big, suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. Garrett walked past those doors with his team, laughing, easy, comfortable, like the whole building was built for him. Terrence pulled out his phone and called his mother. 4 rings, 5, 6, voicemail. Lorraine was between shifts, sleeping. He sat with a dark screen in his hand, and for the first time in this whole story, the first time, something cracked. He didn't cry, didn't hit anything, just sat very still on that cold bench and wondered if this was what it would always be like. Being good enough and having it not matter. 18 years old, last chance, still waiting for permission to walk through a door. 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed. Lorraine had 15 seconds before clocking in. "Baby, I saw you called. What happened?" "They're reviewing me. I might not make round 2. "Did you do your best?" "Yes." "Then that's all that was ever in your hands. The rest is in God's. Now go finish." Click. 15 seconds. That's all she had. That's all he needed. 11 minutes later, the coordinator returned. "Dr. Moore reviewed your paper. His exact words? This student scored 2nd overall, and you're asking me whether he can advance? Let him in. And next year, rethink this policy." Cleared. But 20 minutes gone. 20 minutes the other 7 qualifiers used to study, strategize, settle their nerves. Terrence got a metal bench and a dead phone screen. He pushed through the double doors. Every head turned. 8 faces staring at the kid who walked in late. The kid who almost didn't make it. He found an empty chair, sat down, opened his notebook to the page where he'd written, "Make it undeniable." Below it, nothing. The page stayed empty. He didn't need notes anymore. Everything he needed was already inside him. Round 2 was starting. 600 people were filling that auditorium, and Terrence Powell, the kid from King Sessing with the cracked phone and the safety pin blazer, was about to step onto the biggest stage of his life. But was he ready for what that stage was about to demand? Irvine Auditorium, 600 seats, almost every one of them filled. The stage was wide and bright. A single massive whiteboard stood at center stage under fluorescent lights so strong they hummed. 5 judges sat behind a long, curved table facing the board. Dr. Edwin Moore, silver hair, reading glasses, calm eyes, sat dead center. 8 chairs lined the left side of the stage. 8 qualifiers, the best young math minds in Philadelphia, shoulder to shoulder under those lights. Terrence sat in chair number 5. His hands rested on his knees. His back was straight. The safety pins pressed against his ribs, but he didn't shift, didn't fidget, didn't look at the crowd. Garrett Sullivan sat in chair number 1, legs crossed, relaxed. He'd been on this stage before. And in the front row of the audience, arms crossed, jaw tight, sat Mrs. Sandra Caldwell. Round 2 was oral. Each contestant received a problem, worked it on the whiteboard in front of everyone, and presented their solution to the judges. Problems increased in difficulty. The final problem was reserved for the last 2 standing. The rules were simple. Solve it, explain it, convince the panel. No hiding, no partial credit, just you, the marker, and 600 people watching every line you write. Round 2A came first, standard difficulty. Terrence drew a proof involving modular arithmetic, a clean, well-defined problem with a known solution path. He walked to the board, uncapped the marker, and wrote. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Each step followed the last like falling dominoes. His handwriting was precise, not showy, not rushed, just clear. He finished in 4 minutes, turned to the panel, explained his reasoning in 3 sentences, sat down. The judges nodded. Dr. Moore made a note. No drama, just quiet, undeniable competence. Micro payoff. The audience felt it. A few people in the middle rows sat up straighter. Round 2B was harder, a multi-step optimization problem with an unexpected constraint that invalidated the most common approach. 2 contestants before Terrence stumbled on it. One couldn't finish. The other finished, but with a gap in the logic. Garrett solved his version well. Clean, structured, textbook perfect. The audience applauded. Judges scored it high. Then Terrence stepped up. He read the problem, paused, and instead of following the standard path, he used a substitution, the same kind of unconventional approach that Caldwell had penalized him for in practice. The shortcut she called a trick. The method she marked incomplete. Dr. Moore leaned forward in his chair. "Can you explain why that substitution is valid?" Terrence turned to him, calm, steady. "The standard method works for most cases, but it assumes variable x is always positive. It isn't. If you check the boundary condition, the standard approach produces a false positive. My substitution accounts for that. It's not a shortcut, it's a correction." Silence from the panel. Dr. Moore removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly, put them back on, and nodded once. That nod carried more weight than a standing ovation. In the front row, Caldwell uncrossed her arms. She didn't know she'd done it. 4 more rounds, 4 more eliminations. One by one, the chairs on stage emptied. 6 became 4. 4 became 2. 2 chairs left. Terrence Powell, Garrett Sullivan. The final problem. Mrs. Diane Archer, the competition host, stepped to the microphone. The auditorium went still. The final round. Both contestants will receive the same problem simultaneously. You will each work independently on the whiteboard. When finished, you will present your solution to the panel. She placed the problem on both music stands, stepped back. Terrence read it. A proof requiring the demonstration of a fundamental property in a specific class of functions. Based on a problem from a graduate-level real analysis course at MIT, the kind of problem that separates students who learned math from students who understand it. Garrett went first. He worked steadily, methodically. The standard approach: definition, lemma, induction, conclusion. Every step correct, every line in place. Clean, professional, textbook. The audience applauded, the judges scored it high. Garrett returned to his chair, satisfied. Then Terrence stood up. He walked to the board, read the problem one more time. And then he did something no one in that auditorium expected. He didn't follow the standard approach. He redefined the problem. First, reframing. Terrence introduced an auxiliary function that transformed the original question into a simpler, more elegant form. A construction so unexpected that 2 of the 5 judges exchanged glances. Dr. Moore set his pen down. Second, cross-domain connection. Terrence drew a link between the problem and a concept from topology, a field no one expected at this level. He sketched a small visual diagram that made the abstract proof concrete, something you could see, not just read. Dr. Moore removed his glasses again. This time, he didn't put them back on. Third, the elegant proof. Using his reframed approach, Terrence completed the proof in fewer steps than the standard method. His conclusion didn't just answer the question, it extended the result. He proved something beyond what the problem asked for, a generalization that made the original question look like a special case of a much larger truth. He set the marker on the ledge, turned to the panel, and said quietly, "The proof also holds for the general case. I can show that too if you'd like." 600 people, not a sound, not a cough, not a shifted seat, nothing. Then Dr. Edwin Moore did something he had never done in 12 years of judging this competition. He stood up from the judges' table, not to applaud, not to announce a score. He walked to the whiteboard, and he read the proof, line by line, from the beginning, in front of everyone. When he finished, he turned to the panel. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded like awe held on a leash. "I'd like the record to reflect that this solution demonstrates original mathematical thinking at a level I would expect from a second-year graduate student. This young man is 18 years old." The auditorium erupted. 3 faces told the whole story. Garrett Sullivan, staring at the board. Not with anger, not with jealousy, with genuine, visible awe. The look of a man who just realized the race he thought he was winning had a runner he never saw coming. Dr. Edwin Moore, standing at the board, glasses in hand, nodding slowly, already composing a letter in his head. Mrs. Sandra Caldwell, front row, arms no longer crossed, one hand pressed over her mouth, eyes wide, completely still. A journalist from the Philadelphia Inquirer leaned toward her with a notebook. "Mrs. Caldwell, you're his teacher. Can you comment?" Long silence. Very long. Then, barely above a whisper, "He's not what I expected. I should have seen it sooner." Not an apology. Not a redemption. Just a crack. Small enough to miss, big enough to mean everything. But this story wasn't over yet, because what happened after the scores were announced, that's the part nobody saw coming. The scores were announced 15 minutes later. Mrs. Diane Archer read them from the stage. 3rd place, 2nd place, Garrett Sullivan. Polite applause. Then 1st place. 1st place, with the highest individual score in the 34-year history of this competition, Terrence Powell, Lincoln Westfield High School. The auditorium roared. Terrence stood, walked to the stage, accepted the trophy, a glass obelisk with his name already engraved. He held it with both hands like he wasn't sure it was real. But the real twist didn't happen on stage. It happened 20 minutes later, in a quiet hallway behind the auditorium. Dr. Edwin Moore found Terrence sitting alone on a bench, trophy on his lap, still in the safety pin blazer, still in the shoes, half a size too big. Moore sat down beside him. No handshake, no small talk, just straight to it. "You've won the full scholarship to Penn's Summer Mathematics Institute. That's yours. Nobody can take it." Terrence nodded. "Thank you, sir." "I'm not finished." Moore reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "After round 2B, the substitution problem, I sent your solution to 2 colleagues, one at MIT, one at Stanford. Both want to see more of your work. I'll make the introductions personally." Terrence didn't speak. Couldn't. Then Moore's voice changed, quieter, harder. "There's one more thing. Before round 2, I was asked to review your file because of a flagged evaluation. I want you to hear what your teacher wrote about you." He pulled a folded document from his pocket, opened it, read it aloud. "Added late to roster. Non-traditional preparation background. Performance inconsistent." He set the paper down, Place Terrence's score sheet beside it. Second in round 1. First overall. Highest score in 34 years. I'm recommending to the competition board that teacher evaluations be permanently removed from the advancement process. Your case made that argument better than any policy paper ever could. The results, including Moore's formal recommendation, were published on the university's website that evening. Terrence Powell's name, his score, his school, public record, permanent, unshrinkable, undeniable. And in a parking garage 2 blocks away, Sandra Caldwell sat alone in her car, engine off, hands on the steering wheel. She opened her phone, found the draft of next year's evaluation template, and deleted it. She didn't rewrite it, not yet. She just deleted it. What that means, I'll let you decide. But this story has one more chapter, and it might be the most important one. Sunday morning. The apartment in King's Essing was quiet. Sunlight came through the kitchen window for the first time all week. Terrence walked in and found Lorraine at the table, still in her scrubs, coffee untouched. She'd come straight from her shift. He didn't say anything. He just set the trophy on the table, right next to the stack of Goodwill workbooks, right next to the sticky notes that said, "You're smarter than you know." Lorraine looked at the trophy, then at her son, then back at the trophy. She stood up, pulled him in, and held him. No words, no speeches, just a mother holding her boy in a kitchen that smelled like coffee and morning light. The safety pin blazer hung over the back of a chair behind them. That evening, Terrence logged into the math forum. One unread message. Saw the Philly Olympiad results. Highest score in 34 years. That was you, wasn't it? He typed back. Yeah, that was me. Monday morning, Lincoln Westfield High. Same cracked tiles, same flickering lights. Terrence walked into Mrs. Caldwell's classroom. She was at her desk, didn't look up. There's an advanced independent study form on your desk. I've already signed it. Pause. Then, quieter, almost like it hurt to say. You earned it. Not warmth, not an apology, but an acknowledgement. A crack in a wall that had been standing for 14 years. Small, but real. Terrence picked up the form, nodded once, sat down. And for the first time in 4 years at Lincoln Westfield High, Sandra Caldwell didn't look past him. Terrence Powell didn't get his moment because someone handed it to him. He took it. With a marker, a whiteboard, and everything he taught himself in the dark. 18 years old, senior year, last chance. The system wasn't built for him. He showed up anyway, and the system bent. If you know what it feels like to be underestimated, or if you've ever watched someone prove the whole world wrong, drop a comment, tell me your story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because stories like this, they deserve to be told.
Here's what I want you to take from this. Some people will decide what you can do before you even open your mouth. They'll look at where you are from, what you are wearing, what school you go to, and they say, that's enough. I already know this person. He's clothed. But here's the thing. Their opinion of you is not your limit, it's their limit. It tells you how far they can see, not how far you can go. Those are two very different things. And the hardest part, you can't argue your way past it. You can't explain yourself into respect. Worse, don't work on people who already decided. The only thing that works is the results. The results so clear, so clean, so undeniable that the whole room goes quiet. Not because you told them they were wrong, because they can see it with their own eyes and they can't unsee it. So, stop trying to convince people who don't believe in you. Stop wasting energy on their approval. Put that energy into your work. your growth, your preparation, and then the moment comes. And it will come. Let your word do all the talking. It's louder than any argument you will ever make. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice, every week. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be great. You just need to be so good they can't pretend you are not.